The Philippines is the fourth largest producer of solid wastes among ASEAN countries, recording at least 14.66 million tons of solid waste a year, according to a report by the United Nations Environment Program. It is considered as one of the most serious environmental issues in the Philippines. To address and improve the solid waste mismanagement and garbage problems in the country, the Republic Act 9003 was passed.
So what is the definition of solid waste? Solid waste refers to any materials that are either discarded or abandoned. These materials can come from industrial, commercial, mining, or agricultural operations, and also households and community activities. Solid waste is not only limited to waste materials that are physically solid. It also includes solid wastes that are physically liquid, semi-solid, or a container of gaseous material.
Republic Act Number 9003, an act providing for an ecological solid waste mismanagement program, creating the necessary institutional mechanisms and incentives, declaring certain acts prohibited and providing penalties, approaching funds therefore and other purposes, otherwise known as the Philippine Ecological Solid Waste Mismanagement Act of 2000.
These are the salient features of RA 9003. The institutional mechanisms. It established the National Solid Waste Management Commission, which role is to oversee the implementation of solid waste management plans and prescribe policies to achieve the objectives of this act. It also established the National Ecology Center, which shall provide consulting, information, training, and networking services for the implementation of the provisions of this act. Lastly, it established the provincial, city, and municipal solid waste management boards, which are primarily responsible for implementation and enforcement of the provisions of this act within their respective jurisdictions, and directed to formulate a 10-year local solid waste management plan.
In the comprehensive solid waste management, mandatory segregation of solid wastes, whereas the setting of minimum requirements to ensure systematic collection, the recycling program, prohibition of non-environmentally acceptable products and use of non-environmentally acceptable packaging, market recyclable materials and develop the local market for recyclable goods, establishment of materials recovery facility in every barangay or cluster of barangays. The prohibition of establishing an operation of open dumps or any practice or disposal involving the use of open dumps. Provide for the criteria in site selection, establishment and operation of sanitary landfill.
Incentives will be given to individuals, private organizations, and entities, including non-government organizations that have undertaken outstanding and innovative projects, technologies, processes, and techniques or activities in reuse, recycling, and reduction.
The penal provisions of Republic Act 9003 would be as follows. Littering of waste or in public areas, that would be fined up to 300 to 1,000 pesos or community service between 1 to 15 days or both. The open burning of solid waste, that will range up to 300 pesos to 1,000 pesos or imprisonment of 1 to 15 days or both. Causing or permitting the collection of non-segregated or unsorted waste would range up to 1,000 to 3,000 pesos or imprisonment of 15 days to 6 months or both. Next, the establishment or operation of open dumps. The first violation would be 500,000 pesos plus an amount between 5 to 10% of his net annual income of the previous year. The second violation would be imprisonment of between 1 to 3 years. The importation of toxic waste misrepresented as recyclable or with recyclable content would range up to 10,000 to 200,000 pesos or imprisonment of 30 to 3 years or both. The construction of any establishment within 200 meters from the open dumps or controlled dumps or sanitary landfills would range up to 100,000 pesos to 1 million pesos or imprisonment of 1 to 6 years or both.
The solid waste problem in the country has indeed become a major threat to the environment and the organisms living within. A as well as the livelihood, safety, and health of humans themselves. When dumping sites are adjacent to sources of drinking water, they pose a great risk to the health of the people and communities who are dependent on these water sources. Indeed, as a result of the consumption of contaminated water, mortality and morbidity have increased over time. And if this problem remains unresolved, the number of people dying and acquired diseases will continue to rise.
But the problem brought by solid waste do not end here. As more solid waste is produced in the country, low areas become more prone to flooding, especially in urban regions like the National Capital Region, thus resulting in the loss of lives, livelihood, and properties. The tons of waste produced in Metro Manila alone have clogged drainage systems and tunnels, and also caused rivers and creeks to become more shallow, which explain why severe flooding happens frequently in the area and in the nearby regions.
Through a partnership with the Department of Education, schools have adopted their school-based solid waste management plan, teaching students to properly segregate and dispose waste, reuse and recycle materials, and strict compliance with the Clean As You Go policy. In 2012, the National Eco-Savers program was launched with DepEd as one of the partners of the initiative, highlighting further integration of the aims and principles of RA 9003 in school curricula and the daily practices of students.
To sum everything up, Republic Act No. 9003, or the Philippine Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of 2000, is an act that established the country's ecological solid waste management program. It is created institutional mechanisms in order to effectively execute its mandate. The Philippines have been struggling with the issue of solid waste affecting the health, safety, and livelihood of Filipinos.
Efforts and initiatives have been pursued by the DENR in partnership with other agencies and institutions for comprehensive integration of the mandate of RA 9003, and the institutional mechanisms created by RA 9003 together with LGUs have also delivered results in implementing the provisions of the said Act, albeit a far cry from the targets of the program. The Iloilo Province, for one, has made efforts to realize the goals of RA 9003, including rehabilitation of dumping sites and establishments of facilities.